We're essentially a door manufacturer, so you might be wondering, why is a door manufacturer talking about IPC? So it's definitely a very real question, and hopefully throughout the presentation we'll try and weave both topics together. I guess we're here to learn from you guys as well. So a bit of conversation, a bit of feedback is going to be really useful for us to ultimately help the NHS and other healthcare providers improve patient outcomes. So, like I say, Kingsway Group, we're a specialist door manufacturer. We design and manufacture doors specifically for mental health. We work with approximately 85% of NHS trusts, so likelihood there's a lot of people in the room that, if they're not familiar with Kingsway Group as a name, you've probably come in touch with a Kingsway door or a Kingsway product. I say we're a door manufacturer. We also provide other solutions to mental health, such as washroom items, which is probably the greatest link between infection prevention and control in Kingsway. We are just on the cusp of introducing our new range of washroom items. We get feedback a lot that what's there in the market just isn't working. Either it's too difficult to use, or it's too risky from a patient point of view, and people are resorting to just, paper towels are sitting on the floor, or paper hand towels are sitting on the floor. See a few heads nodding, so hopefully people are familiar with that. But then that leads into a challenge from an IPC point of view. But we'll touch on that a little bit later. So Kingsway began in 2009. Just flick on. I didn't do the slides, by the way, so apologies. Kingsway began in 2009, specifically based around mental health and providing solutions for the industry that improved and the design, essentially. We're glad to say we have seen a significant improvement from a design perspective, and that's come about. Obviously, there's lots of people in the industry, but it's linking in with lived experience, people that have been in these units, providing feedback, saying how it could be improved. I guess part of that as well is linking in with you guys as healthcare professionals to make sure, our product's safe. But from a design perspective, often what gets overlooked is things like IPC. So everybody shouts the loudest about ligature reduction, which is very real, but ultimately we have to be aware of the risks around infection control. So, like I say, traditionally safety outcomes have been the overriding priority. So that's why if you were passing our stand up in the exhibition hall, we provide solutions that minimize the ligature risk. That'll be things like door alarms, things like anti-ligature hooks, so that where you want to hang up towels or pieces of clothing, there's a safe way to do it. You might say it's very basic, which it is, but these are things that make a real impact on a patient's outcome, essentially. So what we have seen is a kind of shift in design. So there is a lot of thinking around the aesthetic of a building and the functionality, the operation of a building, which is good. And it's coming to light that it's about 50-50. So 50% is still very much around the safety. Now, when I talk about safety, I would say IPC is very much overlooked a lot of the times in this project. So it'll be very much right, how can we minimize the risk from a ligature point of view? But then there's 50% that's coming in now. How do we soften the environment? It's very much different from a standardized acute hospital, where there's white and blue and shiny surfaces clinical. We want to bring some sort of softening of the environment, but with that, straight away we're bringing up potential risks from an infection point of view. We'll come to it a little bit later. So we're keen to interact with yourselves. You're dealing with this on a daily basis. What things have you put in place to, let's say, work around these issues, or is there areas where it's just an absolute no-go area that we need to then innovate, come up with a solution that you're comfortable with, the patient's comfortable with, and it's operation. You know, it works operationally. So one such product that we feel it's been very successful in terms of ticking a lot of these different boxes is our latest shower door. So this is a door that would be used in an ensuite environment, so where you have a single patient bedroom and an ensuite. Obviously, from a safety point of view, you might say, well, why don't we just take the door off and just leave it as an open space? You know, it's the safest option. It's very easily cleaned. You know, but ultimately, we want to provide these patients with, you know, a sense that we're looking out for them in terms of privacy and dignity. Some of these patients have gone through very traumatic events in their life. They need that space, especially in an ensuite environment, that they feel protection. Now, a traditional door is very high on a ligature. So if you look at stats, the ensuite door is the highest point of successful ligature events in mental health inpatient units. So we work with NHS trusts, asked them to feedback what they felt was the best outcome. So it was a fixed solution, so a solution that stayed mounted to the door frame. There was a level of customization, so you'll see this has got a nice print on it, so we can print, you know, whether it's a wooden effect, whether it's just a plain color, whether it's a print of a, you know, a location in the local area. You know, it adds that sort of safe way of adding some artwork to a patient's bedroom, a space that maybe has historically been slightly institutional. And then obviously from an IPC perspective, it's 10mm polycarbonate with a rounded hinge which can be accessed 360 degrees. So it's wipe clean. I'm not saying we're there yet. There's still feedback coming in that, you know, we're constantly improving. Things like, you know, screw holes, bits like that, which we're glad to say that we're making progress on. But this just shows if you can get everybody kind of working in the same direction, we can deliver a product that improves patient outcomes and it ticks all the necessary boxes. So we work with Rotherham and Doncaster NHS Trust, and they rolled this product out for their older persons units, and we asked them for their feedback, and what they said, I'll just read it out. So when we thoughtfully design spaces that, sorry, apologies, was getting ahead of myself there. It said, increased patient and staff safety, it improved privacy and dignity, and supported people with mobility if restricted via a chair. The shower doors are the best on the market for IPC, easy to clean and time-saving, a robust and a sturdy design with little retrofitment required. So again, there's a whole host of stakeholders here. The one that's key to you is you know, how we're dealing with the infection prevention and control. So that's just a good example of when we work together, we can deliver good outcomes. So thoughtful room design to promote patient autonomy. So this, if we step aside from Kingsway at this stage, we're just going to have a wider conversation about design in general. Okay, so there's much more to a mental health unit than doors and toilet dispensers. So there is areas where we can make subtle changes which make a big difference to patient outcomes. One such example being adjustable lighting and temperature control. So what we're trying to do is get to a point where the service user has the ability to make changes to their own environment. What we've got to understand, this might not be a short-term stay. This could be essentially their home for the next, you know, it could be 7 days, it could be 6 months, it could be even longer than that. So is there a way that we can, you know, change lighting in a room which makes it more inviting, makes it more homely, and they can match it to their mood, and it gives them that sense of control, and sort of they can regulate their environment depending on their emotions at that time. Also, the beauty of things like that, hopefully from an infection prevention and control perspective, you know, it's not dramatically different to what you're already doing, but it's just using technology to, you enhance the space. Secondly, ligature-resistant personal storage. So some of the feedback that we often get is, if patients can have the service users can have the ability to control their own belongings in their own space, it just provides that level of trust. It's not necessarily about security, but it gives them that sense of ownership for their space. What we've seen is, when people own their space, they're likely to look after it better. So in turn, hopefully that makes, the lives of the housekeeping staff a little bit easier. And thirdly, again, it's very difficult sometimes when you're dealing with existing buildings. We would all love to get a blank page and start again, but can we integrate private areas, especially in communal areas, which it might just be the corner of a room, which is it's a little area where people can go for moments of retreat. It just helps for decompression, and again just shows respect for individuals. If they want to go be on their own, they don't have to be with everybody else, essentially. So again, prioritizing safety without compromising patient dignity. I would say we're still very much led from a safety perspective, and that when I say safety, I'm talking about ligature risk. We need to bring other areas like IPC more to the forefront, to make sure that we're satisfying every area. However, safety will certainly remain the foundation of all mental health design, but it must never come at the cost of dignity. Okay, so whilst we're designing things that are safe, ultimately we want to be aware of what the outcome is for the service user. Ligature, oftentimes, like we would often get people will walk up and say, "Oh, you do secure doors, and you do doors for mental health units in prisons," which, in essence, yes, I get the point about secure, but when our doors aren't actually secure from the point of view of locking, we don't lock people in bedrooms. We want to make the area secure from their point of view. So we design ligature-resistant equipment, but we want to make sure it feels non-restrictive. The other way we can do this is optimize natural light and open spaces. Again, easy to say if we're not building from the ground up, but natural light is great for anybody's mood, and again, it's a way that we can enhance a patient outcome with limited fallback from a point of infection control. And then lastly, residential inspired finishes. Warm textures, natural materials, soft colors can radically transform a patient experience. Now, this is where we often find that, I guess, design and IPC kind of crash together. So we've recently done a co-production with a children's charity, Caldwell Children's Charity, Gilling-Dodd Architects. They're one of the major UK healthcare architects, in designing what the future of a CAMS bedroom would look like. If I just move on to the next slide. So what you're looking at here is, so we've literally built a bedroom in our design building in Sidcup outside of London to try and create, let's think outside the box, let's see what good looks like. Now part of that is changes in floor surfaces, so that they can say, right, there's a line of demarcation, this is my space, and then there's an area where staff can be from an observation point of view. There's soft materials, so that it's bringing down or enhancing mood. There's different places to sit, so obviously you can't see a 360 of the room, but what we have here recessed into the wall is this circle where they can curl up, they can have a moment of themselves. There's a window seat. There is the large rocker in the middle. There is a soft carpet area on the floor. Now, I can see, like, you know, this is where it becomes very, very challenging, and it's a bit like car manufacturers developing concept cars. You know, they develop these things, but they never actually manufacture them. So what we're trying to get at is, let's, you know, blow it all out of the park, but then there'll be certain things we appreciate we'll have to scale back down, and I guess that's why we're here. We need to understand what that is. I mean, there's some very obvious stuff, but then there's stuff that we think could potentially be acceptable, and you guys come in and say, no, we can't have that. And then work with other providers to say, okay, well, we want this result, but is there a way that we can create it? You know, there might not be a product there at the minute, but is there something that we can then develop to provide a better outcome? So just to touch on inclusive environments, so one focus is obviously sensory-friendly spaces. We've already touched on it. You know, what can we integrate? There's things that we can do that, things like lighting, which we've already talked about. I would say they're quick wins. It's where we come to things like touch. That's going to have conflict with infection prevention and control. So, you know, we're keen to hear what that would look like. Accessibility. So obviously there's ADA compliant and beyond. We need to make sure that what we deliver is accessible to everybody, whether it's, you know, wheelchair users. But, you know, in doing so, if we don't try and cram as many bedrooms into a space just because it works, you know, there might be better outcomes if we say, right, well, if we made this 10% bigger, you know, it just elevates the experience. And then finally, varied seating. What we've found is where, you know, if somebody's just got a very limited number of choices, effectively what you're doing is removing choice, because it's Hobson choice, I guess. So if we can give service users the ability to choose, you know, it might be that they want to remain in the room. It might be they want to go out. They might be, if we flick back, this is a recent project that we did for an NHS trust. They might want to be close to their bedroom because that's their safe place, but they have the ability just to sit outside the door. So they're sort of in the main thoroughfare, but they're close to their safe space. But again, we need to make sure that it's compliant from, you know, a cleanliness point of view and operational point of view. And then finally, flexible spaces. So again, feedback from the industry, from an experience point of view, is there's so many people that come through are in mental health. Everybody's got their own taste. Is there a level of customization that we can add into the spaces? Is there, you know, if somebody doesn't like a color of something, can it be swapped out? If somebody doesn't like the feel of something, can it be swapped to something different, something else? I appreciate all these things have to be and are often hindered from, you know, a financial perspective even. But, you know, we need to establish what the benchmark is and then work towards it. So multifunctional communal areas, you know, in a sense, if we can change a lounge into a therapy circle or into a quiet reading nook, or maybe it's moved into an art session, it's things like that, you know, we can utilize spaces, but we can create flexibility. And then finally, smart environmental controls. We've touched on it already. I think there's something to be said for lighting, temperature control, things that we can do that we already have to a point. Obviously, there is technology that's coming through which allows us to do it much easier. But in a sense, we're not changing the fabric of it. We're just changing the atmosphere. We're changing the environment from that point of view. So, lastly, I was just going to touch on we are developing our new washroom range. We've always had a washroom solution, which has been in the market and people are probably using it, and there are other options out there. But the constant feedback is there's nothing really there that works from a risk point of view, and then the default is just to remove it. and I was involved in we host sessions where we bring lived experience into the design room that we have, and we talk about things, and often it's the very, very minor things. So this particular person had been in units several times in his lifetime, and he said one of the most downgrading things is when you go into a mental health unit is, why can they not just provide me with a toilet seat? And you're thinking, why has nobody come up with a toilet seat solution? I mean, for very good reasons. We appreciate there's risks around it, but things like, toilet roll dispensers. Why can't we have a place to put our toilet roll? Why can't we have a place to put our shower gel? Why do we have to set it on the floor all the time? So little minor things, which minor to us guys, but mean a lot when people are in a low state. So hopefully that's been informative. Appreciate it's probably not sort of tuberculosis or coronavirus, but what I'm going to do is hand over to Chloe for a few minutes. She's just going to run through where we're at with the washroom range, and again, we'll be reaching out to you guys directly just to see like what is it you're looking for, and hopefully what we've come up so far is something that will be of benefit to you.
Hello. So sadly, because the washroom range hasn't launched yet, we can't show you any photos of it or any renders and what it's meant to look like. But in terms of IPC and our design, I wanted to talk about the washroom range because we've tried to incorporate it to a certain extent. So for example, a few of our products, such as the soap dispenser and the paper towel dispenser, to make it look more homely and to suit the needs of the user a bit more, we've added a texture on the side of it. So it's raised texture, but it's not to the extent of it being millimeters high. It's just to feel and see a slight bit of difference under, like, just to add a bit of pizzazz, for lack of a better word, to make it look a bit nicer, to make it look less clinical. So it'd be similar to what's on the back of an aeroplane seat, for example, that sort of barely there texture. Now, this may present some issues in terms of IPC, but to what extent would you guys then say the grooves are too much where things could be caught in it and it's more difficult to clean, for example? So that is a feature that would be of interest to us. And then, for example, I think I've spoken to quite a few of you about this throughout the past few days, but our new grab rail, it incorporates a drainage slope. So we know that grab rails are used throughout the NHS trusts pretty much everywhere, inside showers, inside washrooms, just along the corridor. So we've incorporated a drainage slope so that even when mounted horizontally, it will aid in the reduction of liquids gathering in the grab rail itself. So this was to try and help you, like nurses and patients. So instead of mounting it at an angle, it would help ease of cleaning and help stop gathering of liquids and such, and whether this would be beneficial to nurses and hospitals and trust, if you guys had any forethought on that. What else? So additionally, the toilet roll holders, as Jay said, and the shelves, this is to give a sense of dignity and responsibility to the patients, whereas a lot of, obviously your standard toilet roll you'd have at home, it typically has a bar running across it. Well, this isn't very useful for anti-ligature purposes. So our toilet roll will have dimples on the side of it. There is potentially a small sharp point as it sort of replicates an upside down teardrop, but for ease of use, it's an open cavity on the inside. And would this aid in the prevention of substances being caught inside of it and such? And where you guys stand on that, because obviously if there's a toilet roll in there, it blocks the opening. However, otherwise it should be quite easy to clean. Additionally, our new washroom range, we are looking at a polycarbonate alloy or a polycarbonate matrix as the potential material. Now, I'm not sure how much you guys know about chemical degradation of materials, but the two we are looking at, they are both potentially degrade over time with use of solvents and with use of oxidizers such as chlorine tablets and bleach. So ideally it would just be soap and water, the mild soap and water over use when cleaning, and whether that would be appropriate in the trusts and such, or whether use of harsher chemicals such as bleach and chlorine oxidants would be needed. Because from our research, that's not ideal for repeated use, but we'd like to hear your guys' side of the story and such. I believe I've covered everything. Thank you.